My name is Dr. Mark Allon. I chair the Department of Indian Subcontinental Studies within the School of Languages and Culture. I'll talk a little bit about myself, but first I would just want to start the program, what we're going to talk about today. So this is the Languages at Sydney Sanskrit Immersion webinar that you're registered for. So thank you for joining us. First of all, though, I'd like to read this out on behalf of the university, that we acknowledge the tradition of custodianship and law of the country on which the University of Sydney campuses stand. We pay our respect to those who have cared and continue to care for country. As I said, my name is Dr. Mark Allon, and the student presenter today is Hare. She's a first-year student, and she'll be talking a little bit later. My expertise, I teach Sanskrit. My expertise is particularly in Buddhist Sanskrit and Gandhari material. I work on very ancient manuscripts from ancient Gandhara, which is Afghanistan, Pakistan. The oldest Indian and Buddhist manuscripts are dating to the 1st century BC to the 3rd century AD. The program we have a Sanskrit minor, which is basically 3 years of Sanskrit. This has introductory, intermediate and advanced levels. The students who have done Sanskrit, say at Sydney Grammar, can apply for exemption from doing first year and can go straight into second year. So we've had several students from your program joining us, and usually they find that fitting into second year is the best option. We teach, apart from Sanskrit, actually, we teach very closely related languages, namely Pali, which is the languages, the Buddhist texts of Sri Lanka, Burma, Thailand, and Gandhari, the text I'm working on, another Buddhist language from Northwest India, and some of the Prakrits for Jain texts and so on. And we've just started teaching within the Asian Studies program. One of our the program is taught by myself and also Jim Rangans, who's on leave at the moment, but Jim is now teaching Tibetan, so we offer first year Tibetan as well. We also teach within the Asian Studies program, and we offer a number of Indian philosophical, cultural, religious units, such as my unit, Religious Traditions of South Asia, within the Asian Studies program. So it's not just Sanskrit, we have a raft of units related that look more closely at the philosophy, religion, ideas, culture, art, and so on of South Asia. We're generally a very small cohort of students, but we produce some very good students. So, you know, I've produced several university medalists and students who have gone on to gain scholarships to study at Oxford, and now working on major projects on yoga at SOAS in London. One of my PhD students really recently took on the lectureship of Sanskrit at the Australian National University. Another, Jara Saif, who actually studied at Sydney Grammar, is doing a PhD on old Javanese texts which are related to Sanskrit within our program. We deal with it, and their research, huge diversity of topics. So as I said, small cohort, but it's a very good learning environment. It's very personal. Some of the senior units, the students actually do those units via online teaching with ANU. So sometimes we do exchange. So as some of you may be already aware, Sanskrit is an Indo-European language. That means that it's related to many of the ancient languages and many of the modern languages of Europe and even Iran, in fact. You know, as the Indo-European moved into India, sort of 2000 odd BC. So in fact, the language is, you know, closely related to many languages you may be familiar with. So we have many items of vocabulary, you know, such as the family names, Mata, mother, Pita, father, Bharatar, father, a brother, I should say, and, you know, aspects of the body, nas and nas, nose, mukha, mouth, nabi, navel, heart, and so on, and many other words. And if you've studied classical languages, European languages such as Latin or Greek, then of course much of the grammar and many other features are very familiar. So it's not like you're learning Chinese, which is, you know, a very different language group. It's part of the same language group of languages that many of you will be familiar with. Um, Sanskrit literature has been the most important foundation language of Indian culture and civilization, and continues to be of great importance into the modern period in India. It's not a dead language, and as a consequence, being used for thousands of years. There's a vast literature and inscriptions and other things in this language, and also in closely related languages, some of which we teach, like Pali and Gandhari I mentioned. So this includes, philosophical, religious texts, poetry, drama, texts on art, architecture, grammar, mathematics, medicine, law, story literature, texts on yoga, statecraft, etc., etc. And we study many of these. So we in the various years look at texts like the Ramayana, the great account of the life of Rama and Sita and Lakshmana, or more philosophical speculative texts like the Upanishads, or particularly the epics, the Mahabharata, which is the greatest epic, larger than the Odyssey, etc., and of which the Bhagavad Gita, which has become a very important text, forms a part. But Sanskrit, so there's really huge literature, and of course within 3 years you can't possibly grasp all that literature, but our program aims to give you the foundation to be independent and for you to be able to use that literature and to explore it. But Sanskrit and its related languages was not just the texts of Hinduism and Brahmanism, it also was the language of Buddhism, Jainism, other major religious movements and non-religious groups of India. It's really a civilizational language and the foundation for studying the other languages. And, so we have, this language which moves, which has its origins in antiquity, but moves all the way through and informs and determines Indian civilization, for centuries, for millennium, right up to the present period. So you have, for example, now, Mahendra Modi, the current Indian Prime Minister, is favors very much the Bhagavad Gita, a text that we do read. So when he visits the Japanese Emperor Akihito, he gives him a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, saying that it's the best gift he thinks he could give, and he does the same when he meets President Obama. Similarly, modern India is very informed, as I said, by Sanskrit. So, the emblem of India is this, ancient symbol of the 3 lions and the wheel, which goes way back to Emperor Ashoka in the 3rd century BC. And the emblem, the motto is Satyameva Jayate, which is truth alone triumphs. That's Sanskrit, and, so this is, as modern India is living this and informed by Sanskrit. You can't understand modern India without that foundation. Similarly, Indian civilization, of which Sanskrit was so important, a foundation, has been immensely influential through the rest of Asia, particularly Southeast Asia, where you had Hindu kingdoms, Buddhist kingdoms, and then with the transmission of Buddhism to other areas, to China, Central Asia, Japan, and so on. And it's actually not possible to understand much of Asia without understanding India, ancient India, and with Sanskrit as a base. So you think of this wonderful site in northern Burma, Myanmar, which has the whole of the Pali Buddhist canon carved on it, 729 marble slabs. You think of this, Chinese monks from the 5th century onwards were making this arduous, fantastic journey and by foot all the way to India to collect Sanskrit manuscripts, to take back Buddhist manuscripts, to take back to China. And there's been this constant interaction between India and China, as with much of Asia. You think of the Khmer civilization in Southeast Asia, Cambodia. It's an extension of India. Its architecture, culture, language, and so on is very influenced by India. Sanskrit, immensely important. There's thousands of inscriptions in Sanskrit from such sites. We think of this Buddhist site, Borobudur in Indonesia, which was built on the Indian model of the cosmos. And, the ancient names of kings in Southeast Asia were Sanskrit, right? Jayavarma. And this practice continues up into the modern period with, say, the former Indonesian president, Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, where his name is actually Sanskrit. It's Susilo, which is good virtue, and Yudhoyono, which is Yuddha, battle, and Yana, vehicle. So that, in other words, as I said, that you can't understand Southeast Asia, particularly, but other parts of Asia without, understanding ancient India and with Sanskrit as a base. And then you think of the influence of India on the modern world. You think of yoga, how influential that is. You know, this is an ancient practice that goes back way into antiquity in India, and in fact probably has its foundation in pre-Indo-Aryan in the Indus Valley civilization. You think of this whole mindfulness trend, which is, you know, it's pan-Indian mindfulness, these practices, but it's particularly Buddhist as it's taken up by the West. And then you think of modern Australia, you know, with the, you know, increased number of immigrants from South Asia. We have, you know, events like this, which is the lighting up of the Opera House with, you know, Diwali. We have the first New South Wales parliamentarian swearing in, not on the Bible, but on the Sanskrit Bhagavad Gita, you know, text we study, you know, wandering around the harbour of Sydney Harbour. You know, I find things like this, which is votive images of Ganesh and Saraswati and Buddh Yantra coins, you know, in Sydney Harbour. Or, you know, sometimes I'm advised to give advice on, you know, on tattoos like this one, Yata Bhutam Jnana Dasanam, which is Pali, knowing and seeing as it really is. You know, you think of, say, if you go down to Canberra to the National National Gallery, at the very front is this fantastic work by James Turrell, Within, Without. This is, you know, very influenced by aspects of Indian religious architecture, such as the Shiva Lingam, and a good example is that at Hampi, or the Buddhist stupa, right? So this is modern artists. He's actually American, heavily influenced by India. Or you think of our, you know, the Australian poet laureate Les Murray. You know, if you read a lot of his poems, quite a lot of them have references to some aspect of India, gods, practices, and so on. But, you know, this poem here, Walking the Cattle Place, Sanskrit, it's heavily, you know, punctuated with pure Sanskrit words, right? And he's talking about cattle and using that. So in other words, what do you do? Studying Sanskrit, it's not an ancient dead language. It's a language, a living language that is heavily informing modern India and, in fact, the rest of Asia. You can't understand modern India, let alone ancient India, nor much of Asia, even China and Japan, without understanding ancient Indian civilization, of which Sanskrit is the core. So having said that, now I'll introduce our student here, and she will talk about Sanskrit, studying Sanskrit in our program from a student perspective. Here, please.
Hi everyone, my name is Here. I'm in my first year of university studying a nutrition science major and a Sanskrit minor, and I look forward to sharing my Sanskrit learning experience with everyone throughout our program today. I think we'll actually start with questions. If I've studied Sanskrit at school, could that experience be counted towards the minor? As Dr. Allon mentioned earlier in our talk, a lot of the kids from Sydney Grammar who have studied Sanskrit in their senior years of high school, most definitely it does count towards your minor. However, I can't speak too much from that perspective. I do know, however, if you are acquainted with other Indian languages, say for example Hindi, where the written text is also the same as that used in Sanskrit, so Devanagari, that will most certainly make your learning experience a lot easier.
I might just respond to that quickly, which is it's certainly the case with those students who've done Sanskrit, and we have had students who have come into the program who actually studied in their youth Sanskrit in India, say. So normally what I would do in that case is the student would meet me and we would do a short test, and I would just assess their Sanskrit, and if that's good, then I would put them into second year. So it depends. The thing with modern languages like Hindi is what I find with those students is, although yes, they have already an advance on the script, maybe Devanagari, the languages are fairly different, although they're related, and that generally they're not in a position to go into second year, but they start in first year, although they have an edge. Yeah, please, Sarah.
Thank you for that. Is doing a studies of religion major with a Sanskrit minor advisable? Obviously this is an option that if you wish to pursue, you can pursue it. So for example, myself, I'm doing a nutrition science major, as I'm doing a science undergraduate degree with a Sanskrit minor. So it's not necessary for you to do a studies of religion major. However, doing so will probably help you along the way as well, I guess. What are the major texts written in Sanskrit? What is the significance of these texts for our world today? I think I'll let Dr. Allon answer this question.
Yep. I might just quickly go back to the previous question, which is, so we have many students who are doing other majors elsewhere, of course, because there's a major in religion studies. And religious studies is a very good major to do. Of course, it introduces the methodology of studying religion, and that's a good degree. We also have students who are doing majors in philosophy or psychology or linguistics. Some are doing sciences because that's their main focus. So a great diversity. Each of those majors offers something unique into your study, and the advantage there is that you get a cohort of students who are each coming from different backgrounds, and in the classroom learning environment, they're bringing different qualities to the learning experience and the perspectives on what we're studying. So, you know, a student who comes from philosophy will have a different perspective from one coming from a studies and religion major. So to the question of what are the major texts written in Sanskrit, well, as I mentioned, it's a vast literature. So what we tend to concentrate in the program is the better known texts. That is in second year, we would start with the story literature because it's simpler, of the Hitopadesha, Kathasaritsagra. These are like Aesop's fables. And then we would progress and study the Bhagavad Gita. We might do other stories from the great epics of the Ramayana or the Mahabharata. And I particularly like reading the Upanishads, but it often depends. Because we're a small cohort, it depends on the students. If we have students who are particularly interested in a particular area, such as yoga or something, then we will start reading that. So I don't predetermine the text. The text we study arrived at in discussion with the students. And although, yes, my main expertise and Jim's is in Buddhist texts, most of the texts we teach are not particularly Buddhist.
So what is it like to be a languages student at Sydney? Well, to begin, thus far, my journey has been super rewarding, super valuable, and super worthwhile. Looking back at my first semester of studies, I managed to channel down my experience to 3 key points that I think have not only heavily contributed, but also amplified my learning experience. So the first point, and arguably the most important element when it comes to learning a language, it would have to be your own self-interest. Upon studying Sanskrit, especially because this language is such a sophisticated one, I found that the more interest I took in all of my classes, the more ease the learning process became. Additionally, point number 2, any language study at the University of Sydney can't be complete without the lecturers, the tutors, unit coordinators, and of course also your cohort peers. Here at the University of Sydney, we're quite fortunate to have an outstanding academic team that not only supplement, but also heavily elevate our learning experience. And this brings me to point number 3, which is the language itself. Sanskrit, there's no other way to describe it other than it being it's truly like an artistic expression. I really think works rooted in Sanskrit have like the transformative capacity to provide so much authenticity to our modern lives, especially because we're often shrouded in so much chaos. And the more and more Sanskrit I learn, and the more and more I immerse myself into Sanskrit literature, the more this belief seems to hold true. So in a nutshell, that's been my kind of outlook on Sanskrit through my first semester of studies. I'd also like to share with everyone the learning experience of 2 of my cohort peers. So we'll just play the short video now.
Hello everyone, my name is Rakesh. The reason I picked up Sanskrit because I would be studying Vedas. By that I mean if any one of you are into Indian subculture religion like Hinduism, Buddhism or Jainism, then Sanskrit will give you an access into the very books because they were originally written in Sanskrit. If you are into yoga or any art originated from Indian subcontinent, then Sanskrit would be a good tool to go forward and try to understand further the anything what interests you. And I wish you guys good luck, and I hope you enjoy your study in Sydney Uni. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I would definitely recommend taking Sanskrit when coming into university. It is one of the best ancient languages you can learn. It definitely connected so many dots for me in terms of present day things, and it's such a beautiful language where it has so much subtle complexity and simplicity that's really taken for granted these days in modern languages, as it's just not seen. And I found it to be thoroughly enjoyable and enriching, and I'm continuing my studies in it. So I definitely recommend taking it on, guys. Enjoy.
Learning experiences of two of my cohort peers. As it was mentioned, like the more and more acquainted you become with Sanskrit, the more and more visible its intricacies will be. So as an activity into this, we can head on over to our quiz now. It's a fun interactive quiz about Sanskrit and English cognates. Question 1, the Sanskrit word bandhana means a bond or to tie. Which English word stems from bandhana? Blend, bandana, benchmark, or bind? Yep, so the correct answer is bandana. The word bandana stems from the Sanskrit word bandhana, meaning a bond. So we'll go to the next question now.
You moving forward or not?
Yes, next question.
Yep.
The Sanskrit word chitra means uniquely marked. Which English word stems from chitra? Character, criterion, cheetah, or contrast? Yeah, so the English word cheetah has an etymology in stemming from the Sanskrit word chitra, meaning uniquely marked. Next question. The Sanskrit word jungler means arid. Which English word stems from jungler? Jumble, jungle, julid, or juice? Yeah, so everyone got that correct. Nice. The answer is
actually it's contradiction, isn't it? Because the jungle
yeah.
isn't arid, but it's
Yes,
just
yeah.
a wasteland. Yeah.
Yeah. The Sanskrit word upala means jewel. Which English word stems from upala? Aquamarine, emerald, amethyst, or opal? Yeah, so the answer.
Good students.
The Sanskrit word pacha means 5. Which English word stems from pach? Punch, the drink, pentagon, punch, the action, or pentathlon? Yeah, so the answer is punch as in the drink. This is quite an interesting one. It's because the drink originally was made up using 5 ingredients, so alcohol, water, lemon, sugar, and tea. It's quite interesting.
Nice.
The Sanskrit word Simapura means the Lion City. Which city name stems from Simapura? Sydney, Shanghai, Singapore, or San Francisco? Yep, Singapore.
That was quick.
Yeah, I think legend says that there was a prince who was hunting on land who saw like a lion and thus named it the Lion City.
Thank you very much for joining us. And if you would like further questions answering, please email me. Not telephone because can't be on campus much at the moment, but best to email me at markallon@sydney.edu.au, and we can discuss further if you have any questions. Thank you very much for joining us.